10 tips on making yourself a better player. I will say that there's not a particular order to these tips or anything. It's just these 10 in the order that I've come up with here. All right, so we'll start with the first tip here. So, positioning. Positioning is key to this game. If you haven't seen any of our other previous videos, you can go back but see that some games can be won or lost based on the positioning that people have picked. Can make some pretty big differences. Is for tank characters. So tank here, like Nacrel, has Circle of Protection. An enemy that starts its turn adjacent to you and the first target of its attack isn't you is the trigger. The effect is the enemy takes -2 penalty to its first roll and 4 damage. This can't lower its HP below 1. Basically, that will force Cedric to have to try to attack Nacrel instead of Juliet first. So in terms of being a tank, you always want to be like right in the thick of it, trying to defend your ranged characters as much as you can, or even your other melee characters. So having tank passives is very important, and the positioning of that. Same thing with controllers with Despair, their passive ability. You have to do it within 5 squares. So you have to hit an enemy, and then within 5 squares you get to do 4 damage to a separate enemy. So that's a good way to try to maximize some damage, which is another concept we'll come up here with pretty soon. 2. Mobbing. Mobbing is a very key component of Arena of the Contest. It's a good way to try to make your enemy exposed and increase the chances that you're going to be able to hit. In here, we'll see Cedric is actually currently being mobbed by Nacrel and Juliet. Due to the positioning, you have to have 2 of your allies, and Juliet and Nacrel on the same team, and they have to be in a position around the target can't be adjacent to each other. So because that they are not adjacent to each other, they have successfully made Cedric exposed. Exposed condition, -3 defense to enemy attacks, so that increases your chance to hit by 15% there. So remember, it has to be not the heroes that are on the team cannot be adjacent to each other, so this does not count. Of course, being in lava and being adjacent to each other does not count, but currently this does. So that is another good way to try to increase your chance of doing damage, which is always a very vital tip for Arena of the Contest. Try to get as many hits as you possibly can. All right, third tip, focus. So focus is a advanced rule as well, similar to mobbing, except it's for ranged characters. So a ranged character cannot have an ally or enemy within 3 spaces of themselves, and what they do is at the start of their turn they will declare that they are focused, and by doing that they are giving up their chance to do a movement action. So Zafara over here is going to declare that she is focused, and she will get to attack Juliet or Nacrel with the exposed condition. And actually, since Zafara does have Hungry Spirits here, which does give her the benefit to strike 2 targets once, or 2 targets once or 1 target twice. She essentially can double up on that, and she could attack Nacrel with an exposed attack, and then attack Juliet with an exposed attack as well. So that can be a great opportunity to really try to increase her chance as much as possible to do that damage, and get the advantage on the enemy team. All right, tip number, what are we at? Number 4 now. Haste is a really good condition for ranged heroes. So haste down here is you do not incite reaction attacks. Apply when leaving a square or declaring the target of a ranged attack while adjacent to enemies. So Liana here is a character. So Liana, I have a list here. Liana, Talia, Huron, Averlum, and Jade are the heroes that give haste. So Talia here, she has Nymph's Kiss, for example. She can cast and use on an ally, make them blessed and hastened. So in this case, she could make Juliet hastened, and she can make an attack without inciting a reaction attack. So in other words, negating that case of getting her back against the wall. But generally, you're not always going to have haste, so you want to make sure that if you have a character like Talia who can help support and get you out of that hot spot there. Haste can be beneficial for melee characters as well. For instance, let's say Cedric here was hastened. He could continue to make movement all the way over here to Talia and not incite any reaction attacks from Nacrel and Juliet, and of course get himself out of that mobbed condition. But it's not quite as beneficial. Obviously, in this case, Nacrel's a special case with circle protection, but getting that additional movement, being able to kind of go wherever you want, can be vital or important for a melee character, but it's even more especially so for range characters. So definitely get that haste on those range characters so they can move freely around the map without getting any reaction attacks. All right, tip number 5, passives. All right, so passives are just generally something that a lot of people end up forgetting, especially newer players. It does take some time getting used to. As you start playing the game, getting it down, you'll kind of start remembering them. I'd say more so people forget the circles than they forget the on hits. So for instance, Cedric's brutality, he just has to hit a target that isn't adjacent to any of his allies, and that target will take 4 damage. So that one's pretty easy to do as long as you don't have any allies nearby, and you're going to be able to remember to get that 4 damage. But Nacrel here, circles always trigger on the enemy's turn, which is actually something that a lot of people end up forgetting. They'll get kind of bogged down thinking about what they're doing, or maybe focusing on what exactly the enemy is doing and what their plans are. And then they forget these little things like circle protection, where they can hurt the enemy and give them a penalty to their roll. So that can be pretty vital. So you really want to make sure to get those passes as much as possible. Things like despair and everything can help lay out some extra damage. Or hope, which can give some additional healing to your allies. All right, so we are on to tip number 6. Maximizing damage. All right, so maximizing damage, of course, generally this is a good concept. I think some people understand, but sometimes there's a lot of different ways you can do damage in this game. You can do damage through directly on hits, right, with your primaries or special attacks. You can do them through effects. Maybe there's additional effects that do additional damage, like Icy Wind, for example. If both rolls hit, the target takes +3 damage. There's also different ways about positioning, like we mentioned earlier, right? Being able to knock somebody into the lava, that's additional 4 damage there. And then, of course, passives, right? Being able to get into those spots to be able to trigger those passives. So here's a good example of maximizing your damage as much as possible. So you'll notice Zafara here is at 9 health. Cedric, is at 20 health. It is Juliet's turn here on the blue team. She has special ready. She's going to decide to use Blizzard. For the sake of time, we're not going to roll, but we're going to assume that she has first successfully attacked Zafara, and then she has successfully attacked Cedric. So a thing to notice is she has accuracy. She gets to hit a target at least 5 squares away. In this case, that is accurate, and that target will take an additional 4 damage. Blizzard is a ability that actually allows her to divvy up her damage however she sees fit based on the targets that she's hit. So she gets 25 damage to lay out. In this case, Juliet here would want to go, okay, well, I do get that 4 damage from accuracy, so I want to count that first. Move down to Zafara to 5. Then she's going to use up that 5 damage from Blizzard. And then she's going to use that 20 remaining damage from Blizzard to take out Cedric, thus eliminating both enemies on her turn. That's a very skilled play. A good way to maximize damage. You can see things similar to ideas like that we've done in the past with especially characters like controllers are really good for this. You get a character that's really low on health. Despair is a good way to attack a higher health character, say Nacrel here, very low health, only 2 health left. Zafara is attacking Juliet, and Juliet she's way up here, gonna attack Juliet and do, let's say, I don't know, Hungry Spirits, for example. She's gonna attack her twice and trigger her despair, and because of that, she gets to attack another enemy within 5 squares, thus utilizing that despair damage to take out Nacrel, and without actually focusing him and wasting the full damage from that ability, which could be up to 12 damage if it's hit twice. So that's a good way. You want to try to maximize your damage as much as possible through passives, through moving enemies around, and distributing it appropriately, right? So similarly, you could throw somebody in the lava that's low on health instead of just putting it all on one person to begin with. 7. Heroic actions when you can't make an attack. Oftentimes, players will use their heroic actions, which you see up here. We have a variety of different ones you can pick, and useful in different circumstances. So, of course, planning which heroic action you have is important as well. But also using it at the appropriate time. So Liana here, you'll notice, is way down out of the map. She somehow has gotten way lost off on the side of the board trying to go after, say another character, or she started out in this position. But now she needs to really get back in the fight. The problem is she is too far away. She's not close enough to be able to make her attack on her turn. Thus, she would not be able to make an attack. She'd have to do a double movement to get in close, or she'd just have to move that one time, and essentially that would be it. Well, another good idea is you can decide to use like a heroic action, like a heroic ambush, to move all the way across the map, make your attack without actually needing to be that close. Or you could use it in other ways, like heroic schism, start throwing off your enemies, or even just heroic magic. Even that one just does 10 damage to an enemy, and then you get to do one of the other special effects on there. So those are a good way to do some extra damage, help out the team without wasting your turn. Because every time that you're kind of wasting, you have another hero that's moving around but doesn't actually get an attack, is essentially less damage that's being applied on the field. So in terms of positioning, generally you never ever want to put yourself against a wall. So you see here, Juliet is pushed right against this wall here. That is not a good position to be in. Generally, being against the wall is a lot worse to be in for a ranged character than a melee character, because obviously your melee character, you can just attack back and there's not really too many repercussions for it, versus being a ranged character like Juliet is here. She is going to incite a reaction attack from Cedric if she tries to make an attack, either against him or any of his other allies here. And there's not really much she can do either. I mean, she has to take a reaction attack in this case, because even if she were to sidestep to this position here, or this position, she is still going to incite a reaction attack from Cedric, which is not something you ever want to do. You try to do as little inciting reaction attacks as possible, because of course that gives your enemy a chance to do some more damage to you, and that damage can add up, and especially against like a brute character that can do 8 damage, that can be pretty big. All right, so now we're going to go to tip. All right, moving on now to number 9, permanents. All right, permanents. You want to get those permanents out early. Permanents are great abilities that can be used, to really up your damage, right? So we get abilities like Bloodthirst, for example. While you have 35 or fewer hit points, your strikes are crits on rolls of 17 or more. So Cedric, who's a lot lower, he wants to make sure that he has that already to that point that he'll be able to output even more damage with his Bloodthirst. Or even like Liana, for example, with Maelstrom. She can make a combatant within range hastened or slowed. Making somebody permanently slowed or hastened, of course, like we talked earlier, can be really beneficial or devastating. So getting those out on the earlier in the battlefield can be beneficial. There is ways to, of course, counter that, but I do suggest getting those out early. Another ones like lightning reflexes we see all the time, getting those basic attacks before the end of the turn. Call the Master, another one to throw off the positioning of your enemy and make attacks against them, basic attacks against them. So there's a lot of different permanents out there that you can use. Generally good to get on earlier rather than later, so you can benefit the most from it. All right, number 10, using a basic attack to increase the chance to hit on a low health target. All right, so Nacrel here. Let's say Nacrel, he only has 2 health left. And let's say Zafara, she is too close into the battlefield, right? She to be able to be focused, she would have to move out and away. Thus, she wouldn't be able to do it. And let's just pretend that the altar here is already taken up. So this is something that can be good if you don't have a blessed condition like within reach. Or an alternative just in general to not doing that, but you use your basic attack. So you just roll the dice, which gives you a bonus 1 to your roll, and thus increasing your chances to hit slightly more, 5% over just deciding to do a primary. So it's a good way to keep putting out that damage, increase those chances to hit, and get the advantage on the enemy. So anyway, I think that is covering just about everything. The 10 tips that I